Okay, we're going to be here to discuss how to create a value stream map. And creating a map is, I don't want to say it's an onerous process, but it is not a simple process if done right. One of the first things you have to do is think very hard about what you're going to map out. There should be a customer and a supplier. You may actually be on the production floor mapping a process from one particular stream that creates a product to a point to the next stream that then between those 2 points you may want to learn everything there is to know, and you'd create a value stream, which I'm going to tell you how to do that in a minute. Or you may have 2 processes that go through from a person performing a task to person finishing that task, or maybe a group of people performing a task, and you want to study the input to the output. Something that we can identify with might be the process when you finally are a senior and you can apply for graduation, and you get into the system and you click I want to graduate in the spring or the December and maybe the summer, and I'm applying for graduation, and so you've clicked that button, and that actually starts a process that somewhere in the registrar's office there's probably 1, 2, or 3, maybe even 4 people who will pull up your courses that you've taken, your transcript, and they go through, and perhaps they have to check with your advisor. They may have to get back to you, and ultimately, hopefully before graduation, someone says, hey, guess what, you are going to be all set, and then you get the grades that you need, and hopefully you walk and have a wonderful life. If there's a problem, then there has to be some corrective action taken. Well, what you have to do is go through this to create the value stream map. What you're going to do is create a visual representation of what's happening between those 2 points. If it's a manufacturing process, you show all the activities. If it's the activity like we were discussing, as far as graduation is concerned, we map out from the time you push the button that you want to have your degree status checked to the answer of getting that at the end. And I really can't tell you, but there's probably, because I am an advisor, I know that there's dozens of steps that happen in there, and then if there's something that has to be dealt with me as a student's advisor, that adds a multitude of other steps, which would all have to be mapped out. But what we would do is create a map, and we'd use standard value stream mapping symbols, and sometimes these can be created from a standard deck, or you can make your own, and you could make like a set of small post-its be one activity, and maybe a decision is this particular post-it that's in a diamond shape. Maybe if you need some information along the way, you add some post-its in. Maybe you have to use colors, and that use these post-its to generate that. And though this isn't an example, you can go out and buy these in shapes of houses and hearts, and we've done up Post-its. Now the reason I like Post-its is when I've done some value stream mapping, we've actually bought rolls of paper and just rolled them across the walls and overlap them, so we have essentially one great big space that we can draw on, and then we take these Post-its and we stick them on the wall to represent the various processes, and then after we've identified everything we're going to talk about, then we draw lines on the wall. Well, then what you're left with is wall-size drawing of your process, and I would say just about every one of these that I've been involved in, somehow people have heard that I'm fairly decent in Visio, and I would then get selected to put these drawings into Visio. I don't recommend that you get selected constantly for that activity. It takes a lot of time, but you're going to bound the process by selecting a very specific activity to study. You're going to need to draw out all the information that you've gathered. And what kind of information might you be gathering during this is like inventory, the cycle time, the time taken to make one product or to do a task, any changeover time from the last good piece to the next, uptime is the demand machine utilization, how many operators are involved, how many shifts are being worked, how much available working time is there, because you have to take into account people's break times, lunch, whether or not they have the opportunity to go to the men's or ladies' room, because sometimes that interrupts your flow. Or if it's a work cell environment, maybe it doesn't, because people are trained to take over when things happen like that. In certain types of factories, like orange juice manufacturers, there are actually people who sit off to the side to go work on the line when they're needed. What's the scrap rate? What's the pack size? Is it based on pallets? What's the batch size that's used? Now all that information has to be written on your drawing, which is why a lot of times you take up a large wall. You just need all that information. Now you could definitely start plugging all this into Visio and electronic database or Excel or Visio and just start drawing it. I recommend that you have a large display so that the entire team can see what you're putting on. What I've found though is that when you're gathering this data, all of a sudden there's an aha moment, and you realize that you have your interpretation of how things were done, but when you review this with the people who are actually performing the task, they're like, hey, you didn't understand what I said at all, and this really happens over here. Or it could have been that they just didn't relay it well, but that's why you have them come back and look at it. So one of the other things we have to look at is the inventory, and what's the timeline from start to finish. And are there multiple suppliers, other people who are feeding into the line or into the people process? Are there multiple customers? We have to know that and make sure we catch that. Then once we have all this drawn out, we want to interpret the value stream. And what we want to look for are excessive inventory, long cycle times, uptime issues, excessive setup times, poor quality, any rework that's done. Those are areas that we can trap and work on. Then what we want to do is, after we've worked through and addressed maybe the excessive inventory, long cycle times, whatever it may be, we want to create an ideal and future state value stream map. So if we had the ideal process, what would it look like? And then if it's different, what's the future state that we're going to work towards? So that's a value stream map, and when we're done, we're actually going to publish it. It's going to go out to everyone in the organization. Now there's advantages, and the reason we do that is that people can see what we've done on our team, so it may feed information into other teams. Or there may be another team that looks at it and says, hey, you know what, we have this really good thing we've just done over here. We've implemented some software. We can just change it a little bit and you could use it also. Or, oh wow, I didn't realize you were doing all that. Let's eliminate one of these requirements. And so you get feedback, and then you'd update your future state value map afterwards. You actually publish a Kaizen newspaper usually, where all these activities that are happening each quarter or every 4 or 5 months go out to the entire company, so they can look at lessons learned. So the idea is to cut time and waste out of the process.